There are moments in life that shatter your understanding of reality, moments that strip away the ordinary and reveal the thin, fragile line between this life and whatever lies beyond. I never imagined I'd face one of those moments on a warm Tennessee night, surrounded by the people I loved, with the stars overhead and the familiar hum of crickets in the air. I never imagined that a single step outside my parents' farmhouse would pull me into a place where time, pain, and even death itself seemed to bend. It started with an argument, one of those slow-burning fights that leaves a bitter taste in your mouth and a dull ache in your chest. My wife and I had been visiting my parents on their sprawling farm, a place that feels both like a sanctuary and a trap, depending on the day. That night, it felt like the latter. We had been arguing for hours, our voices rising and falling like the distant howls of the coyotes that sometimes wander onto the property. The words were sharp, each one hitting like a small, invisible punch, reopening old wounds and exposing fresh ones. I could see the frustration etched in her face, the way her jaw tightened, the way her hands clenched and unclenched as if she wanted to grab hold of the anger and shake it away. Eventually, she suggested we take a walk. Maybe she hoped the fresh air would clear our heads, or maybe we just needed the space to remember why we loved each other in the first place. I hesitated at first, the anger still simmering in my chest, but then I grabbed a couple of flashlights and an old, rusted lantern from the porch. Its glass was fogged with age, the metal frame crusted with rust, but it still cast a warm, flickering glow that felt comforting in a way I couldn't quite explain. As we stepped off the creaky wooden steps into the dew-covered grass, the night felt alive, humming with the low, steady chorus of crickets and the distant croak of frogs hidden in the tall, swaying grass. I remember the way the air felt, heavy and wet against my skin, each breath a struggle as we moved further away from the warm, golden glow of the farmhouse windows. The trees around us loomed like ancient, silent sentinels, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, stretching toward the moonlit sky. Their shadows stretched long and dark across the ground, merging with the shadows cast by the lantern's flickering light, creating strange, shifting patterns that seemed to dance at the edges of my vision. I felt a chill then, a prickling sensation at the back of my neck, as if something unseen was watching us from the darkness. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me from the shadows, but there was nothing, just the empty, moonlit field stretching out behind us, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. I remember the way the air felt thicker, the way the darkness seemed to close in around us, the faint, metallic taste of fear lingering on my tongue as we walked deeper into the shadows, our footsteps muffled by the damp earth. I reached for my wife's hand, the warmth of her skin, a small comfort against the growing chill that crept into my bones, my pulse quickening as the wind rustled through the trees, whispering secrets in a language I couldn't understand. We walked in silence, our footfalls muffled by the damp earth, the beam of our flashlights cutting through the darkness in narrow, shaky lines. I should have noticed the uneasy stillness in the air, the way the shadows seemed to stretch longer than they should, but I was too caught up in my own swirling thoughts, too wrapped up in the echo of our harsh words. We were halfway across the open field, the tall grass brushing against our legs, when I heard it, a sharp, cracking sound that sliced through the night like a blade. I froze, my pulse quickening as the echo of the shot seemed to hang in the air, stretching the moment into something surreal, something terrible. I felt my wife's hand tighten around mine, her breath catching in her throat as we both turned toward the sound, our flashlights swinging wildly across the trees, casting long, frantic shadows. I barely had time to process what was happening before I heard it again. Closer, this time. A crack so loud it felt like it split the night in two. Without thinking, I shoved my wife away from the direction of the noise, my body moving on pure, primal instinct. And that's when I felt it. A sudden, searing pain exploded in my chest, followed a heartbeat later by another white-hot burst in my lower stomach. Each impact hit like a red-hot hammer, driving through muscle and bone, sending a shockwave of agony through my entire body. I stumbled, the world tilting violently as my legs gave out beneath me. I hit the ground hard, the wet grass cool against my feverish skin, the metallic taste of blood filling my mouth as my wife's scream tore through the air beside me. I tried to move, to crawl, to scream, but the pain was overwhelming, a crushing, all-consuming wave that stole my breath and blurred the edges of my vision. I could feel my heart racing, each beat sending a fresh surge of fire through my chest and stomach. My hands trembled as I pressed them to the wounds, but it felt like trying to plug a dam with paper. Time stretched, every second an eternity, as my blood soaked into the cool earth beneath me. I remember looking up at the stars, their cold, indifferent light flickering through the shifting branches above. My wife's frantic sobs filled the air, her fingers gripping my hand so tightly it felt like my bones might break. As my vision blurred and my thoughts spiraled into panic, I became acutely aware of every sensation: the dampness of the grass beneath my body, the chill of the night air against my feverish skin, the coppery taste of blood on my tongue. My pulse pounded in my ears, each heartbeat a painful reminder of the life slipping away from me. I felt my wife's hands on me then, her fingers trembling as she pressed them to my wounds, desperately trying to stop the bleeding. I could hear her sobbing, her voice shaking as she whispered my name over and over again, her tears falling onto my face, mixing with the sweat and blood that clung to my skin. It was then that I realized I might die here, on this patch of cold, damp earth, my life slipping away beneath the indifferent gaze of the silent, swaying trees. I felt a wave of regret wash over me, a crushing, suffocating sorrow that gripped my heart and squeezed until I thought it might burst. I regretted every harsh word, every missed opportunity, every moment I had taken for granted. I regretted the argument that had driven us out into the darkness, the foolish pride that had kept me from reaching for her hand, from pulling her close and whispering that I loved her. And then, as suddenly as the pain had hit, it began to fade. I felt a strange, numbing warmth spreading through my body, a gentle, all-encompassing calm that made my fear melt away. The darkness around me seemed to pull back, the edges of my vision growing sharper, clearer, as if a veil had been lifted. And then I was standing. I blinked, looking down in shock to see my own body crumpled on the ground, my wife hunched over me, her hair falling in wild tangles around her face as she pressed her bloodied hands to my wounds. I tried to speak, to reach for her, but my hand passed through her shoulder like smoke. Panic gripped me. I screamed her name, but my voice was nothing more than a whisper on the wind. I stepped back, my eyes locking onto the still, lifeless body in the grass, the lifeless me. For a moment, I felt a terrible, bone-deep chill, a sense of loss, so profound it nearly crushed me. I reached out again, my fingers passing through my wife's trembling form like a ghost, the warmth of her body just out of reach, the sound of her sobs echoing in my ears. Then, I felt it a pull, a gentle but unbreakable force drawing me away from the scene, away from the broken, bleeding body that lay crumpled on the ground beneath me. I stumbled, my surroundings shifting in a blur of light and color, the cool night air replaced by something warmer, brighter, more alive. When my vision cleared, I found myself standing in a place that felt both familiar and otherworldly, a field of wildflowers stretching as far as the eye could see, the colors impossibly vivid, the air tinged with the sweet, earthy scent of freshly turned soil and blooming jasmine. I turned slowly, my heart racing as I took in my surroundings, the tall, swaying grass brushing against my legs, the sun hanging low in the sky, its golden rays casting long, stretching shadows across the ground. I felt a breeze then, warm and comforting, carrying with it the faint, familiar sense of home, the sweet, smoky aroma of a bonfire, the crisp, clean smell of freshly cut hay, the faint, musky odor of damp earth and decaying leaves. And then I saw them. My grandmother, her dark eyes shimmering with tears, her face breaking into a bittersweet smile as she reached out to me, her arms open wide, her voice soft and trembling as she whispered my name. "It's not your time," she said, her voice echoing in my mind, filling me with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Beside her stood my grandfather, a man I had never met in life but whose face felt as familiar as my own. His eyes were bright with pride as he looked at me, his thoughts somehow reaching mine without the need for words. "I'm proud of you, boy," he said, his voice carrying a warmth that filled the hollow ache in my chest. The fear and confusion that had been gripping my heart slowly melting away as his words washed over me. And then I saw her, a little girl, her dark hair tangled around her face, her eyes bright and mischievous as she stepped closer, her small, ghostly hand reaching for mine. "Do you know who I am?" she asked, her voice clear and bright, the sound of it ringing in my ears like a bell. I shook my head, my mind racing as I tried to place her, to remember her face, to understand how she could feel so familiar, so deeply connected to me, even though I had never seen her before. "I'm your sister," she said, her eyes shining with an emotion I couldn't quite place. A mixture of joy and sorrow and something else. Something deeper. Something eternal. The one who never got the chance to live. My mind struggled to process her words, my thoughts spinning in a chaotic whirlwind as I stared at the small, ghostly figure standing before me. My sister. The one I never knew. The one who never had a chance to draw her first breath, to feel the warmth of a summer sun, to hear the sound of our mother's voice singing lullabies in the quiet hours of the night. She reached for me then, her small, ghostly hand passing through mine like a whisper, a fleeting touch that sent a shiver down my spine, a chill that spread through my body like the first breath of winter. "Tell Mom I'm okay," she said, her voice bright and clear, her dark eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that felt almost too real, too alive. "Tell her I've been watching over her, over all of you. I'll be here when it's your time." I felt a lump rise in my throat, my heart aching as her words sank in, the weight of them settling into my bones like a heavy, unseen burden. I wanted to reach for her, to pull her into my arms, to hold her close and tell her that I would never forget her, that I would carry her memory with me for the rest of my days. But my hands passed through her small, spectral form like mist, her image wavering and flickering like a candle in the wind. My grandmother stepped forward then, her warm, familiar scent filling the air around me, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears as she reached for my face, her gentle, wrinkled hand cradling my cheek, her touch as soft and warm as I remembered. "It's not your time," she whispered, her voice a soft, trembling melody that wrapped around my heart, filling me with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. "You have so much left to do. Your children need you. Your purpose isn't fulfilled." I felt the world around me begin to blur, the vibrant colors of the wildflowers fading into a soft, hazy glow, the warmth of my grandmother's touch slipping away like a distant memory. I reached for her, my fingers grasping at the empty air as she stepped back, her eyes filled with a deep, abiding love that shone like a beacon in the fading light. "Go back," she whispered, her voice growing fainter, her image flickering like a dying flame. "Live. We'll be here when it's truly your time." And then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. I felt a rush of cold air, the sharp, metallic tang of blood filling my nose, the rough, wet earth pressing against my back as my body crashed back into itself, the pain returning with a vengeance, a searing, all-consuming fire that stole my breath and filled my vision with a blinding, white-hot light. I gasped, my lungs burning as I struggled to draw in a breath, my heart hammering in my chest, my wife's frantic sobs filling my ears as her fingers gripped my hand, her touch warm and alive and real. I opened my eyes, the world around me slowly, coming back into focus, the cold, indifferent stars flickering above, the cool night air filling my lungs, the sharp, metallic taste of blood still lingering on my tongue. I felt my wife's arms around me then, her body shaking as she pulled me close, her tears soaking into my shirt, her voice a broken, trembling whisper as she whispered my name over and over again, her fingers gripping my face, her eyes searching mine for some sign of life, some flicker of hope. I reached for her, my arms trembling as I pulled her close, my heart swelling with a love so fierce, so overwhelming, it felt like it might tear me apart. "I'm okay," I whispered, my voice hoarse and broken, my words a fragile, trembling promise that hung in the air between us, a promise that I would fight, that I would survive, that I would come back to her, no matter what. Over the next few days, as my body slowly healed, strange things began to happen to me. I experienced vivid dreams that felt more real than my waking life. I started seeing things that couldn't be explained, shadows moving in the corner of my eye, whispers in my ear when no one was around. I began to realize that maybe my near-death experience had awakened something within me, something deep and primal, a connection to the other side that I had never known existed. I know that my near-death experience changed me forever. It showed me that there's more to life than what we can see and touch. It reminded me that there's a world beyond our own, full of love and light and infinite possibility. And even though it's hard to explain or understand, I know that it's true. We're all connected in ways we can't begin to comprehend. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and remember, the veil is thinner than you think. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share for more encounters with the unknown.